It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times magazine. Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
Welcome back, everyone. Half past the hour, and joining us again for our weekly dose of medicine, we've got Dr. Mitch Earlywine. How you doing, Dr. Mitch? Oh, well, got to hit the mute button. Let's try that again. How are you, Dr. Mitch?
8 inches of snow, man.
Oh, my goodness. Still snowed in there in northern New York, I can imagine. So got the fire going, got the booty socks on, everything okay?
Oh, yeah, we're making the best of it.
All right. We've got lots of questions and studies and science to get to. Before that, let's just remind everyone you can call in live with your questions at 971-533-7111, or you can send your questions in through our chat room. Just go to 420radio.org and click on the green chat button. We'll take our questions there if you have something to ask. But let's start off by giving Dr. Mitch the first word in cannabis science. What's the latest that you've got for us?
Well, the most pressing issue, I need to emphasize that Pete Carroll and I were at USC together, and I never saw him smoke any pot.
So we can't blame legal marijuana ingestion on Pete Carroll's decision to leave the best running back in football without touching the ball on the half-yard line to win the Super Bowl. It wasn't pot to blame.
If he had made it, it would have been brilliant, but now he's paying the price. What can I say?
There's an upside to legal weed and a downside to legal weed, I suppose. All right, well, poor Seahawks fans out there, you know, at least you've got legal weed and some of the best sativa grown on the planet to get you through this off season. I know it hurts. Believe me, I suffered the same pain 2 weeks ago. All right, let's get to some questions. I got some email questions for you, Dr. Mitch, and our first one here comes from Andrew in Sacramento, who wants to know about dabbing and whether or not when you dab, is that vaporizing weed or is it combusting weed? Are we getting vapor or are we getting smoke?
As it turns out, it's a pretty fine distinction, but it's probably closer to combustion. It's probably closer to smoke. There tends to be an opportunity, at least, for a little more of the respiratory irritants to be in there. But we haven't done the kind of studies we've done with smoke versus vaporizers, so it's unclear exactly what the respiratory impact is going to be long term.
You know, I thought, he emailed this question to me and I gave an answer. I was like, well, I mean, doesn't the difference between vaporization and combustion come down to the temperature that it's heated to?
It's very much the case, and the key with the vaporizer is that certain respiratory irritants aren't released because the plant really never catches fire. With concentrates, it's super high heat, but what's in there is actually mostly just cannabinoids, so it's kind of a curious trade-off, and we'll just have to wait and see when the right pyrotechnic folks can get a hold of it and do the studies that need to be done.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. So basically that would be pointing out that since concentrates don't have a whole lot of plant matter in them, there's not much plant matter to burn, even if you are burning it.
That should be the case, so we'll just have to see how it turns out.
All right, very interesting. We got another question by email from Mark in St. Louis, who says, I've heard that stomach acid can destroy cannabinoids delivered orally. I have an acid reflux issue, and edibles don't seem to hit me like others. Could the high acid content in his stomach be the reason for this?
Nobody's ever shown that decreases cannabinoid total content, but it definitely leads to erratic absorption. So it's distinctly possible that this might be why. And the irony is some cannabis-mediated links to ulcer and some of the high acid reflux issues may respond to the cannabis. So I really understand the quandary, and he might want to turn to a vaporizer instead.
All right. Now let's get to some of the science that came out over the past week. There's a study, the Phoenix New Times blog reported on this, that daily marijuana use doesn't really change the brains of adults or teens. This is something we found, with checking out the responses of people, but this is one looking at the actual brains. What can you tell us about this study?
I was delighted to see that this published, because it's not easy to publish a study that says, hey, there's nothing going on here. But they looked at both adults and in adolescents. These were heavy users. The sample size was big enough. If something had been there, they should have found it. And I think what's curious is that as soon as I posted it, everybody was saying, well, I'll believe it when it replicates. But they never, of course, say that when we do find differences. I think now that they're not letting them just, rapid fire, just grab any spot that might be different. When you actually have to hypothesize ahead of time, we're going to see these effects are either super small, only in super heavy users who started really early in life, or in fact not there at all. I was delighted that the Phoenix News at least covered this somewhat. You notice CNN did not hit this. This isn't in The Guardian. This isn't in the places where we usually see the alarmist marijuana is going to kill you headlines, and so I was a little disappointed with the media about their coverage.
Yeah. All right. We've got a call coming in from the 865 area code. You're on the air. What's your question for Dr. Mitch?
My question is there any new research done as far as vaporization and severe depression and depressive dementia?
Well, what we've got is some correlational stuff on depression, but the cannabinoids are never my first choice for depression treatment. Nice 12-session treatment with a trained therapist is usually better, or check out David Burns' book, Feeling Good. And then with the Alzheimer's and other dementia, we've got some compelling stuff, in the Petri dish and even now at the rodent level. It seems like it ought to be preventative of those amyloid plaques that seem to be the source of Alzheimer's, but we just don't have the human data to really say it's going to happen yet. But that's the kind of thing where the risk would probably not be too high.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your question, 865. Appreciate you call in. Our phone lines are open at 971-533-7111. There's another study that we wanted to ask you about, Dr. Mitch. This one was reported by Denver's 9 News that pot has similar carcinogens to tobacco. Oh my God, Dr. Mitch, it's time for pot and cancer wards.
I mean, it's so funny because we've known this for decades. Yes, they do have some key components that are the same, but there's one critical difference. There's nicotine in tobacco, there's THC in marijuana. THC makes it so if you do have a lung cell go rogue and become cancerous, you will basically get it to kill itself and get sloughed off. Nicotine, unfortunately, increases the probability of that same cell turning into a big tumor. The rest of it is maybe the source of some tightness in the chest or a little bit of wheezing, but it's not going to create lung cancer. Donald Tashkin's been following people around in Los Angeles for literally 30 years now. We're just not getting those marijuana-only cases. Obviously, anybody who's smoking cigarettes is taking the risk in their hands, but cannabis alone does not seem to be a source of this.
That's right, folks. I always like to say that, chemistry matters. Water contains hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen's highly explosive, but water is not flammable. Okay, so you can't just say something has carcinogens and expect people to think that therefore makes it carcinogenic. There's a whole lot more at play, and like Dr. Mitch mentions, THC is the big thing at play in cannabis smoke. Of course, if you're worried about the smoke, folks, switch to vaporization. It's always better for you. All right, we've got another story here. I ranted on this a little bit last week, but this data coming out from the Colorado State Patrol showing that, as the Denver Post puts it, marijuana was involved in 12% of the DUI cases. What are your comments on this?
That statistic by itself, unfortunately, doesn't mean anything. They're looking for it more. There are more cops who are trained to try to find folks who are impaired by cannabis. We have no idea what the percentage was even a year ago. So I'm sorry that they're 12%, and I encourage people to never drive high, but I'm not sure what to say as far as an impact of legalization or even just the natural variation in how much this goes year to year.
Yeah. And to me, marijuana being cited in 12% of their DUIs is kind of interesting that 12% of people aged 18 and older in Colorado use marijuana monthly. So
that's pretty much exactly what we'd expect.
What a surprise. We found the exact same distribution. All right. The chat room is reacting to some of this nicotine and cancer information, asking, is it really the nicotine in cigarettes that causes cancer, or is it some of the other 400 toxic substances in the smoke?
So nicotine alone may not start the cancerous cell, but it does prevent it from basically killing itself and getting sloughed off. So it does encourage the tumor formation, even though a lot of stuff suggests that maybe nicotine by itself is not a carcinogen.
Okay. And are the carcinogens themselves generated because of the heat and combustion?
Only in the sense that they're creating these dark burned things. Basically, burnt stuff, carbon like that, is often the source of this. So it's because this has been lit on fire. Heat may increase your susceptibility to it turning into a tumor, but heat alone is usually not a carcinogen.
All right. We're speaking with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Our phone lines are open at 971-533-7111. And we want to remind you that if you don't get your question on the air, you can always send it in by email to 420research@gmail.com. Dr. Mitch gets that directly, and you can keep it private if you so wish. Our final question for Dr. Mitch, I'm looking at our governor. I just spoke about our governor, Kitzhaber, who seems to be wanting to change the marijuana law here in Oregon before it's even been implemented. We're hearing similar things in Alaska, and Keith Stropp wrote a great article about this. What would you like to tell these elected officials about their plans to implement marijuana laws in Oregon and Alaska?
Bottom line is, when you were sworn in, you swore to uphold your state constitution, and that means following the law the way it was written. I'm sorry if it's not the way you like it. Go ahead and put one up for a ballot measure yourself if you want a different one. That's really all I can say. All
right. And just an update real quick, if you have any information for us on the progress of marijuana reform in the New York Assembly. I know, I believe that they're trying to reintroduce some measures to modify medical marijuana and perhaps even move forward with legalization. What can you tell us?
I went down there, put a tie on and everything, and spoke as effusively as I could. It's going to be in the Finance Committee, and they're going to try to estimate all the pros and cons and turn them into dollars, which has always driven me completely crazy because freedom doesn't actually have a price tag.
Yeah, really, it should be legal, even if it ends up costing us money. We shouldn't determine people's civil rights on a cost-benefit analysis. Dr. Mitch, thanks for joining us here on our Cannabis Q&A, and we'll talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right, and stay warm there. Hope you don't get snowed in too badly in New York State. Looking pretty snowy out there. And back here in Portland, it's 45 and rainy, just like it is for the past 2 months, and it will be for the next 2 months. Groundhog Day doesn't really mean a whole lot to us here in Portland. There's so many clouds, there's no way a groundhog could possibly see its shadow. Hey, we're coming back with the Radical Rant right after the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. We're going to talk about deputizing citizens to fight and die in their drug war. It's got to stop now.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.